Okay, hello. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you can see me now. Thank you so much for bearing with us while we figure out how to do this whole remote thing. But I think we are now back. Our drivers are updated. Our stream key is reset, and I believe that you can see me now. Um, but I just have to trust that because I can only see my face. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to start over again with this presentation in case you missed that. So let's go to share screen, go over here, and we're going to press play. All right. So hello and welcome. I'm Dylan McKenzie. I'm the Incubator Director at the NYU Game Center. And tonight I'm going to give you a very brief history of the Incubator. I'm going to describe our goals and our structure. I'll review the application process, and I will answer your questions. So first, let's start with some context. The Incubator is part of the NYU Game Center, so a lot of the values and objectives are shaped by the Game Center. And chief among that is our desire to foster the creation of forward-thinking and experimental work. We're not just interested in making games, we want people to be playing these games. We want them to be out in front of people. And bringing games to the market, selling them, is one way to reach people outside of the Game Center. It's a good way to reach a lot of people, and it's a good way to ensure that the creators get the resources they need to continue making games. But making a game into a product can really change its fundamental nature. It's a new context, and it requires new skills and a reconfiguration of what the games are. And this kind of thinking, this is what the incubator comes out of. It's our attempt to build a pathway to bring experimental games to the market. We want creators to make their experimental work. We want to do it in a way that harmonizes with the commercial and creative goals. So this is what we call the NYU Game Center Incubator. The idea of it is to focus on things that we don't prioritize in art school. So that's the differences between an LLC and a corporation, or how to prepare a press kit. These are the things that you would put at the top of your list in terms of skills needed for game development. But for entrepreneurial game development, these are very much critical. And our fundamental assumption is that creativity and commerce, that making art and making rent, these are not oppositional forces. There's a more thoughtful relationship between art and commerce that is possible. And in fact, really a full-throated, a wholehearted attempt to make money is one path to more creative and more expressive games. So succinctly, the purpose is to bridge experimental work with the realities of the marketplace. And we do that by giving promising games time, space, guidance, and resources to maximize opportunity for commercial success. So let's look at each four of those things in practice. So time, at the most fundamental level, the incubator makes it possible for developers to focus on developing a game full-time. So from 3 months, from June until September, the program gives developers a context to figure out how to launch their games, and that culminates in a showcase in September. So how do we do that? How do we get to launch? So just to talk about the incubator curriculum briefly. So we say that there's scaffolding for successful work. This is not a continuation of school. This is a context for professional game development. So in broad strokes, what happens is that each team develops a strategic plan, which is customized to their state of development and their goals. And this happens over the course of the first month, primarily with the help of some workshops and advisor visits. And then you're going to iterate on the plan throughout the course of the incubator and all the way through to launch of the game. And then milestone reviews are exactly what they sound like. These are opportunities for the developers to share their group with each other and with the advisory board in one place, and to get feedback on that strategic plan and make sure that they're staying on track to finish the game in the plan they have. Looking a little more closely at the weekly experience. So week to week, what we're going to be doing is whatever we can to enable you to reach your distribution goals. So there's a couple of things I've highlighted here. The weekly check-in is a production meeting with me. There's going to be some kind of basic stuff like what did you say you would do? What did you actually do? What are you going to do this week? We're going to use that time to find advisors and to make sure that you have the resources that you need to make the game. There's also a very large advisor board. We're going to talk about that in a second, but there will be advisor one-on-ones. So this is going to be meetings with advisors, concentrated feedback. This is going to be, say you're working on your trailer, we'll put you in touch with an expert on making videos. If you're working on a programming challenge, we'll put you in touch with someone who has expertise in that area. There are also advisor workshops. These are one or a few advisors talking to the larger group of people. These are for skills and resources that we think that all the teams need to see. So, for example, if we do a legal workshop on forming your company, this is something that applies to all of the teams, and everyone would be a part of that conversation at once. We're also going to continue doing Playtest Thursday. Of course, well, we'll talk about kind of in-person versus remote here, but the idea being that we want you to be playing your game with the intended audience of your game. You need to find out who wants this game, who enjoys it, what do they like about it, and get in touch with those people and learn from them. So you're going to be continuing to do that during the incubator. There's also a Slack. So we've had this for several years, 4 years now with the incubator. And this is communication with each other, with the advisors, with the faculty, the whole community around the games. This will be, of course, very important this year in particular. So this is the part of the presentation where I would say space, where we provide developers with free and dedicated office space to work on similar challenges. But if you have been paying attention, you realize that we are making our decisions about the future based on what the government and the university tell us what is safe to do, and that's not feasible right now. So if this is the case that we're seeing, then what are we going to do about that? So, I mean, to some degree, this is an open question, and we're going to be learning about this as we go. So the incubator runs from June until August, and there are a lot of different scenarios about what that future will look like. We do know that we're not going to run the incubator business as usual. We are assuming that the entire incubator will happen remotely. So unlike previous years, you don't need to be here in New York City to do the incubator. And even if we do go back to some in-person components, we're going to make it possible to do the entire incubator remotely. There is a lot of value in working in the company of others. And so we are going to be figuring out ways to replicate that experience. So we're going to lean heavily on Slack. We're going to do meetings over Zoom, things like what we're doing here tonight on YouTube. There will also be some social events. And there's going to be new affordances of working remotely, and there's going to be things that we miss. So we're going to do our best to replicate the upsides of working together physically and look for new opportunities to find value in working remotely. And in addition to kind of physical space, we also give metaphorical space, which is a mental space to figure out what your game is as it becomes a product, which is not immediately clear when you set to bring a passion project into the market. You have to ask questions like, who wants to play this? What is my business model? What is a business model? How does that business model affect my game design? So, we want to find projects that have a clear path to commercial viability, but we understand that that path can be circuitous for experimental work. And so a lot of what the incubator is going to do is give you this mental space where you can think about that journey that will guide you through. Speaking of guidance, the incubator advisory board is really the heart of the program, and it's the principal thing that's responsible for incubator success. So our advisory board includes people like Alliance Digital Media and Xbox. We have funding organizations like Kickstarter, Indie Fund, representatives of lawyers, successful developers, alumni of the incubator, Game Center faculty, Game Center staff, and others too. So the advisors, they do all kinds of stuff. They help us pick the curriculum. They select the projects. They provide workshops. They give feedback. They refer other partners to join. And the idea of this advisory board is that we are going to align partners around you based on what your projects need. And we think that advisors and teams, when it's most successful, there's sort of a mentor style relationship. And that's something we're going to be emphasizing quite a bit this year to try to find the group of people that really are the champions for your project and are excited about it, and how can you work with them to find the most success for it. So one specific program we have is called the executive producer. This is sort of a special relationship between one team, one game, and one advisor. And this advisor is sort of attached to the project for the long term. They're going to be looking out ahead for you, making sure that you know how to navigate out the variety of feedback that you get from different advisors, that you're kind of staying on track with what the game that you want to make is. So this is some people that have done this before: Margaret Robertson, who's the director of game development at Dots, Sam Barlow, who made Her Story and Telling Lies, Adam Rebecca Saltzman of Finji. There's been a number of people that are EPs, and this is a really unique opportunity to work very closely with an advisor at a pretty high level, and we're excited to continue that program. Another thing that we have is resources. So we give each participant a living wage, which is $8,000, contingent on the full-time work and satisfaction of the milestones. So this allows you to focus fully on launching the game. This is meant to provide stability so that you can kind of be fully in this project. And the incubator, in addition to this, we also provide a lot of non-monetary resources, which is legal help or promotion, access to this wider network, software expertise, and much more. And there is a resource exchange in the form of a revenue share. So we don't take any equity in your project. There's no creative direction of your project, but there is a revenue share. We're going to be meeting with the advisory board before the contracts are finalized to make sure that we want to continue with the revenue share that we have in the past. But in past years, that revenue share, and we expect this to continue, in past years, the revenue share has been, if you make more than 10,000 in a calendar year, you keep your first 10,000, and the incubator has a 10% revenue share after that. So the idea is to be generous to projects that if you find some success, we want you to keep that. But if you find that you're in sort of a Minecraft type situation, well, then we're going to use that to fund the incubator in future years. This doesn't go back to some NYU coffers. This goes directly to running the incubator in the future. Another resource we have that is new this year that we're very excited about comes to us through the Bigglesworth Family Foundation. So this comes out of a recognition that entrepreneurship is a really risky venture, and we want to give developers as much possible runway as we can, so that before they're in the full pressure of the market, they can really figure out what their game is and how to leverage it best for themselves. So what we're going to be doing is there is a $25,000 follow-on funding grant that will go to at least one project whose team is composed of one or more developers from underrepresented demographics. So we want to shift the balance between what kind of resources people have, so that more people are able to launch their games and become successful entrepreneurial game developers. And the Bigglesworth Family Foundation, through our advisory board, recognize the work that we're doing, and they put up a lot of money to make that possible. So we're really excited to see what we can do with that this year. And while we're talking about funding, I also want to talk real quick about New York State, who is making this incubator possible. We've been working closely with New York State Economic Development, with the Mayor's Office of Immediate Entertainment, and both of these organizations are really passionate and bought into growing the games industry here in the state. And the incubator is a part of that initiative. And the reason why we're here today is in part because the state really wants to make sure that there is a growing and thriving game scene here in New York. And so far, it's going quite well. Every year, it gets harder and harder just to show a couple of representative examples of what success from the incubator looks like. There have been 38 games that have gone through the incubator over the last 6 years. So I'm just going to highlight one from every year to give you a sense of kind of what success looks like for us and what it might look like for you. So from the first cohort in 2014, Soft Body by Zeke Ferrant was funded by Indie Fund. It launched on the PS4 and PC in May of 2016. It received honorable mentions at the IGF, including the grand prize, among many other awards. Next is Ape Out. Ape Out was from the second year of the program. It was also backed by Indie Fund. It was published by Devolver, launched on Steam and Switch last year, February 20th of last year. And Professor Matt Bach, who worked on that in addition to Professor Benefati. Gabe Gazillo is the main developer. Matt Bach just won a BAFTA Audio Award for the procedural jazz percussion soundtrack to Ape Out, which is really incredible. You should definitely check that out. Next is Rewardable. Rewardable ran a successful Kickstarter campaign that funded in 8 days. They made about $45,000, which was well over their goal. Then they were published by imprint of Penguin Random House, and they were distributed and continue to be distributed on Amazon and big box stores and airports and all over the place. That's an example of a non-digital game in the program. Um, the Membrane from 2017, this was by Seth Scott, and Perfect Hat is the name of his studio. It was nominated for an IGF Best Student Game. It was self-published on the Switch. It is on sale, I believe, as we speak. So if you're looking for a great game at a deep discount, I highly recommend picking up Membrane. Memoir Blue from 2018. This is being developed by Cloisters Interactive. Continues to be in development. They founded a studio in Taiwan and have grown the team since then. And we look forward to good things coming from Memoir Blue. And from last year's program, Bizarre Barber. This was a virtual reality game about cutting hair in a post-apocalyptic subway. It was funded in part by Oculus, and it launched on Steam just this February. And you can play this right now. So um, I do want to be realistic with you. None of the games that I just showed there, or any of the other games in Incubator, have made $1 million. Most of them have had more critical success than financial success, and that means that your game, if you get into the Incubator, is likely to follow that trend. It's true that almost all games will follow that trend. Um, but even through that sort of sobering, realistic lens, we do see examples of this. We see really resounding evidence. The Incubator is enabling the development of high quality and ambitious artistic games, and we're providing the greatest possible odds of finding their market and finding financial success. And yeah, we're really excited about what the program has been able to accomplish and what we think we can do for you. So let's talk about whether or not your project might be a fit for the Incubator. So broadly speaking, we are going to be looking for games that fit into three categories. So public launch, this is, you can read it here, but this is appropriate for a game that is going to finish fairly close to when the program ends. That we think that if we can give you some lightweight goals to structure your program, or to structure your development, that you can find a launch without finding additional funding, and without a significant amount of extra time. So these are games that are kind of near completion, where in the Incubator you're going to be working a lot on finding your audience and actually launching the game and managing the post-launch as well. Other games might be more appropriate for crowdfunding. So these are projects that are further along, but maybe they're more ambitious overall. Maybe you want to grow the community around the game before a public launch. So here, again, we're going to be talking about finding who wants this game, who's excited about it, growing that community, figuring out, well, how much money do you need to do this thing? What is the full scope of the project? And how do we get you to a finished project through crowdfunding? Another option is pitch to publisher. So similar to crowdfunding, but here you're probably earlier in development. Perhaps you have an even larger scope project, or you want to be working with a organization that has a certain amount of expertise that you don't have, be that in marketing or in PR. And so the focus here is going to be finding on who are the people that might want to partner with you? What do you have to offer them? And how do we put you in touch with those people so that you have secured a publisher after the Incubator, so there isn't a period of time where you're kind of in limbo between those two things. So broadly speaking, these three paths are what we're going to be expecting you to fit into, either public launch, crowdfunding, or a pitch to a publisher. So how do we decide whether or not you are going to benefit from this program? So I'll first say that the cool thing about the Incubator is that your goals and our goals are very much aligned. The Incubator is only successful if you're successful. So that means that we really are literally invested in your success, and that also means that we want to pick projects that we feel we are able to support with the resources that we have. There's a specific kind of range of projects that we're able to help with. Obviously, you saw some non-digital games, you saw digital games, mobile games in a lot of different stages of development. So there's a broad range of projects that can apply, but we are looking for a certain set of characteristics that we feel that we can best benefit, that we can support you with. So, and by we, I mean the Game Center faculty and the staff, and by the Incubator Advisory Board. This is the group that's going to be evaluating your applications. So we look for three things. Commercial potential. What do you want to get out of this game? What is this looking for? We don't want to just fund one-off projects. We want this to be the beginning of ongoing, sustainable entrepreneurial game development. So we want to say, can this project get you to a place that creates a platform for you to grow from here? It's not about just finding a one-hit wonder. Are you building a studio, or are you building a brand? Do you have some interesting IP? What do you want to do with this time in the incubator? Production feasibility. So this is more about the the harmony between the idea that you have, the project or product that you have, and the team that you have to do that. And so, um, do you have the right resources to make this game happen, and can you do this in the timeline that makes sense? If you're building a large scale MMO for whatever reason, and there's only three people on the team, the incubator is not going to be a good fit. We just don't have the resources to do that, and we don't feel that you have the resources to do that in that case. So we want to find the right balance, where we say, yeah, we can help you do this thing, and you're the right team to do this. The last thing is sort of the X factor here. This is the idea that, if you already have a clear market fit, if this already is a game that fits into a known genre, you may not need the incubator. We want to be here for the projects that don't necessarily have that obvious fit right away, and so we want to see stuff that's interesting, experimental, that's innovative, that's pushing the boundary in one way or the other. It's very hard to kind of describe this in a clear way, but essentially it just means that we're looking for things that are different, the things that wouldn't happen if they weren't able to get some funding and some resources from the advisory board and from the incubator. So let's talk about key dates. These are the key dates that you should be aware of. The applications are due on the 4th. There's going to be a review night on the 12th that will happen remotely. A very small subset of applicants will be invited to join us on this review night. So there will be, just to be realistic, the majority of people that apply will not be invited to this review night. We wish we could help everyone. We just don't have the resources to do that. So the review night will be a small group of projects. You will pitch to the advisory board. They'll ask you some questions. But everyone who's applying should make sure that you save the date for that 12th, because we need you to be there so that the advisory board can talk with you on that day. The timeline's a little accelerated here, so we're going to try to turn that right around as fast as we can. We don't have a set date for that. We need some time to make sure that all our advisors can voice their opinion. But sometime in mid-May, we're going to be sending out final decisions, and the incubator will begin on the 1st of June, and it will run until the 28th of August. And there will be a showcase. The exact format of that to be determined in September. The exact date of that is on the application. I believe it's the 4th, but that information is out there for you. So those are the key dates to be aware of. And now I just want to open it up for questions. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And now what I'm going to do is our production coordinator Logan has kindly he has found the questions in the chat, and he's shared them with me. So I'm going to switch back. I think you're going to be seeing me now. And let me look through these questions here. Okay. So how many teams get accepted in the incubator? It depends. So we have enough funding for a number of seats. Usually we're going to be funding between 10 and 12 developers. So that means the number of teams may vary slightly. We're looking for somewhere between 3 and 5 teams, 3 and 5 games in the incubator. So it sort of depends on who applies and what the balance of the incubator looks like. So some people might have a project which is one person, but it's very, very small in scope, or it's very far along and they're looking for just a small set of additional experiences and expertise. In that case, we might choose to accept a one-person project, although there's a lot to do as a solo developer, so that we need to consider the production feasibility. Are we sure that you are the person that can do this all the way? On the other hand, there might be a team of 7 people that has just an incredible game that we're really excited about, that we think that we're in the right position to help, and in which case we may have 2 or 3 teams in the incubator. So it really depends on who applies and what the right balance of teams is. So somewhere around 10 or 12 people will be accepted into the incubator. Um, I'm also curious how a game is considered experimental. Me too. Um, that's a good question. I mean, I kind of spoke to that towards the end there. I I mean, I don't really have a better explanation than what I gave you already. I would say look at the other projects that have been in the incubator in the past to get a sense of who we've accepted before, and that's a pretty good indicator of the kinds of things that we're looking for now. Um, you know, conversely, I don't know. Fortnite doesn't need the incubator, right? It just League of Legends doesn't need the incubator. If things already have a very clear existing market fit, um, this isn't the best program to help them out. And so we're looking for stuff that just needs an edge, that needs something more that they don't have that's already out there. That's what we're going to be looking for. I know it's a little nebulous. If you have questions about whether or not your project is a fit, you're welcome to write us or to write to me directly, and I'm happy to talk with you about what that looks like. Um, is there a size requirement on teams? No, but the production feasibility is where we're looking there. We need to make sure that you have a team that is appropriately sized for the scope of the project that you're making. So um, there, because we're picking a number of seats. Well, the hand's going to nowhere there. Because we're picking a number of seats, there is a balance that we're working on. We want to see games that will be completed. We want to see finished projects. That doesn't mean necessarily by the end of the incubator. It's not like the last day we're expecting everyone to launch, but between those parameters of pitch to publisher, crowdfunding campaign, and a launched game, we want to make sure that the games are done, and therefore we want to make sure that you have the team that you're needed to do that. And so that means that we need to make sure that we're picking teams that have the right size for the project that they are. So when you're applying, we want you to explain to us, be clear about what the game is, and be clear about what each person on the team is doing, and what resources you have, or what resources you might need as well. Um, again, it doesn't the incubator works when it works for you, and so it really doesn't behoove you to misrepresent what you need for the project. If you're not yet at a stage where the incubator is going to benefit you, then maybe it makes sense to come back next year. But it's like if you do a Kickstarter campaign, you need $100,000 and you try to raise 1,000, and then you say, well, we'll figure out the other 99. It's unlikely that's going to go well for you. So the same kind of idea applies here. Make sure that you're applying with the team that you need to make this game happen, and kind of trust us to say we know what we have and we know what we can offer, and if you're the right fit, we'll find you. Um, what if I have an analog game with a few users that I'd like to support making digital? Yeah, that's entirely possible. We're like any other kind of application. We're looking for existing success, and so if you have something that's like, already working in a certain format, and you want to try to bring that to another platform, you want to go from non-digital to digital, then that seems totally plausible. Um, I think any the same ideas apply there. Is like we want to make sure that you have the production feasibility to do that. So um, you're welcome to get in touch with us, and we can give you more details about what that would look like. But yeah, if you have an existing game and you're looking to leverage that into something more, that's totally appropriate for the incubator. How polished is our game expected to be for the application? Yeah, you're going to hear me say it depends quite a bit here. So I'll just say it now, which is depends. It- the closer you are to launch, the more polish we're looking for, of course. Sometimes what we say is we're looking for projects that have a strong sense of themselves. Like if you're still kind of figuring out who this is for, what you're working on, what's fun about it, you're probably not there yet with this project. What we're better at doing is saying, okay, you've got something that's maybe that's this big, but it's really really great, and so let's figure out how to grow that. Let's figure out how to find the right people that are excited about that. So polish is a really relative term, and it depends quite a bit on what kind of project you have. There's a lot of room for variability there. So we just want to see that you're at a phase where we can help make this project happen. We're looking to help you launch games. So the more clear it is that you can do that with the help of the incubator, the more likely it is that we can help you out. Will every team get an EP? Yes, they will. Every team will get an EP. Every team will get one EP. However, there's also the advisory board. There's about 100 people that have been on the advisory board over the course of the whole program. So starting in 2014, not every person is going to be a part of the advisory board every year. We're going to add more people as needed, so that if we find there's a project that really needs a lot of help with, I don't know, shaders, then we'll find someone who's really great at shaders and bring them in. So the advisory board kind of grows and changes to adapt to the games that are a part of the incubator. But certainly every team will get one EP, and the role of that EP in part is to help you kind of parse this information. So you're going to get a lot of different sources. A lot of people will say, you should think about this, you should change that, you might want to do this. And after a while, it can get kind of cacophonous. And so the EP is like, I know your project, I know why she's saying this and why he's saying that, but what they're really saying is this kind of thing. So let's kind of focus on that. So um, the EP doesn't have creative control over your project. We do want you to, we pick these people very carefully, and we pick them to line up with your project. And so if the EP says to you, I think you really need to work on your pitch deck, we expect you to work on your pitch deck. But if the EP says, I want you to change your name of the game to, to this, you can say, I appreciate your feedback, but I'm not going to do that. So that they're not going to take control of your project. But they are very experienced people that are going to help guide you in the right direction. And we want you to be kind of responsive um, to the kind of feedback that we're giving you. So everyone will get one. They don't control your project. They do need to be credited when you launch the game, but other than that, that's pretty much what the relationship looks like. Um, is revenue percentage based on each person or each team member? Revenue share is flat across projects. So each game has a revenue share of 10%. So we can talk more. I imagine there's gonna be more questions about this, but we can talk more about what revenue share means. Essentially, it's money in your pocket, more or less, without kind of getting into the exact kind of definition of it. It's like, once you have published your game, we're not going to take the cut of the iOS store, of the App Store, or of Steam. It's like, once there's money coming into the bank account of Your Game LLC or Your Game C Corp, if you're making more than 10,000, you keep that first 10,000, and within a calendar year that you make more than that, then there's a 10% revenue share. So we've tuned this over time. The point of it is not really to be, like I said, it's to be kind of generous for the projects. That if you're just kind of just getting a little bit of wind under your wings, then we're not going to try to take any of that. But if you're really soaring, then that money's going to come back into the incubator, so that you can give back to the people that did that, in recognition of the value that we've created for the project. What about teams and games from other countries? Yeah, so this is the first year. Well, in the past, we have had people come to New York City from other countries and other states to be part of the incubator, and so we're going to continue doing that. This year, we're planning for the incubator to be remotely entirely. It's possible that there may be some kind of in-person component towards the end, but you'll be able to do the program entirely remotely. So if you're in Germany or anywhere else in the world, then we welcome you to apply. We do need to think about things in terms of time zones, and making like can get the most out of the incubator possible. So this is new. This is new for us too. We're going to figure it out together. But certainly, I encourage you to apply, and as long as you're with us on this sort of grand experiment, then we're excited about the idea of being able to reach further and to work with more people without the kind of requirement to be living in New York City. So yeah, come along with us. Is the revenue share for the first year or the entire life of the game? It's for the life of the game. Um, in reality, that probably is going to be the first year of the game. But sometimes projects take a long time before they get going. And we once you're in the incubator, you're kind of always a part of the incubator, and we want to help you finish this project. So we don't just disappear in September. We do have to go back to teaching classes and other things that we're doing here. But we are, the advisory board and myself and other people here, the other incubator developers that are going to be in your cohort, they're all going to be attached to your project to some degree for the life of the project. And so we want to continue to support you over time, and as the game develops, then we're here to help. So yeah, there's no that's for the lifetime of the project for the revenue share. For how long will the revenue share be? Yep. So same deal. Same question. Epic already takes 20%. Yeah. So this is after platform fees. So the revenue share does not include the platform fees. Again, this is money that's coming to you. Um, how is the additional stipend awarded and decided? Right. So we are going to be working with a group of advisors who have had experience supporting underrepresented developers and have experience awarding grants of this nature. That group of people is going to get together, a subset of the advisory board, and they're going to decide which project they think would most benefit from this. It's possible. I'll just leave this open. We don't yet know if this is going to go to one project. It's possible that it could go to multiple projects. At this time, there is this gap that happens where you're in the incubator and then you're not, and then all of a sudden, that stipend goes away, and it's going to be a real challenge. That's a very perilous time for the projects, and so our intention, or we think it would be best to give it to one project because they can really have a runway that allows them to support the game for a period of time afterwards. But that may not be the case, and so we're leaving that idea open. But there will be a group of people that will pick that. They will have had experience with this kind of application in the past. When will we do that? We're going to do that about the little bit after the halfway point of the incubator. So once you've had a chance to go through all the workshops, once you've developed your strategic plan, and you have a much better sense of what your launch is and what you need to do at that time, there'll be a very kind of minor application that you'll submit to the advisory board. Excuse me, and then we'll pick from there. So we're going to tell the team that gets that, team or teams that get that, before the incubator ends, so that they can plan accordingly for the development of the game afterwards. Is the revenue share linked to the IP or just the game? If there's a sequel, there's 10%. So not a sequel. I don't have the exact language in front of me of the contract, but essentially, the 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 game is what the revenue share is going to be with. If you make a sequel, that's not the case. If you're selling virtual goods within the game, then that is part of the revenue share. Like whatever this game is doing to make money, if that game is making more than 10,000 in a calendar year, then that's going to be part of the revenue share. If you make My Game 2, that's a different game, and that's not subject to the revenue share. Can you give some examples of games that don't have a clear market fit? Um, Hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, again, look at the other games that have been part of the incubator in the past. That's sort of a negative way of putting it. So, it's not about it's less about the lack of market fit, and more about there are fewer examples of existing success to follow. So, um, I talked about Soft Body. So Soft Body was one of the first game that I mentioned from 2014. So this is a twin stick action game. He called it a bullet heaven. So it's a bullet hell sort of. It's an abstract puzzle game sort of. So there are things about it that make sense. There's a kind of procedural Sonic landscape. It looks sort of like everyday shooter. It looks a little bit like I don't know, Binding of Isaac, but it doesn't look like any of those things, and it functions different those things. So we're looking for projects that are kind of like a little bit to the side of what already exists out there. The case of Rewardable. So Rewardable was a non-digital game. This was a game that had a very deep and complicated, well, not really complicated, but there's a lot of work that went into the understanding how language works. They use a lot of computation, and Alison Parrish is a poet and a computer scientist. She was part of the team. She was really analyzing language and figuring out how it worked, and was trying to figure out how do I include this more theoretical understanding of how language works, and to make a fun, accessible, family friendly word game that was going to be compared to Bananagrams and Scrabble, but what wasn't those things. And so, how did they find a fit between those things? So it's not about the game being kind of lacking something. It's about it kind of having some new territory that you can't point to it and say, well, it's like this game but that. Well, we're looking for stuff that is not quite the same degree of, oh, I understand what that is already when I'm looking at it. My best advice for that is look at the projects that we funded in the past, and you can also email us if you have questions about it. I wouldn't really overthink the fit. I mean, you have the game that you have at this point. The application is due very soon. You're not going to change the project that you have. Um, if you're excited about this program and you like what I've talked with about, and you feel like you have a game that meets the criteria, then just submit it, and we'll go from there. There's nothing you can change about it at this point. And frankly, if you're here and you found me, you're probably already in that neighborhood anyway. So I wouldn't stress too much. Um, the review night. Who will be speaking? Okay, more about the review night. Okay, sorry, this is a multi-part question here. Okay, so let's talk more about the review night. So what this is going to look like is that I don't know exactly how many projects, but a handful of projects will be invited to come, but not physically to the game center. That are going to be they're going to be on in a Zoom, probably like I am right now. There's going to be a brief pitch by the team. I think it would be good to have the whole team there, but if you want to have one person as your kind of your main advocate, you could do that. Um, you're going to talk a little bit more about what the game is. You're going to, and after that, essentially the advisory board, which will be, um, again, in this case, well, in the past, it's been around 20 or so people that have been there. It will probably aim for about the same amount. It can get a little bit, there's a lot of people in one, Zoom room here. So around the same number of people will, will ask you some questions, and they're going to ask you questions around the three criterias. They'll say things like, um, I see that you plan on launching on Switch. Have you ever done that before? Have you gone through the certification process for before? Why is Switch the right platform for you? Have you considered other ones? And so they're just going to try to understand what your project is. And since you can't talk back obviously in the application period, the projects that we think have a strong chance of benefiting from the incubator, we're going to bring you in, and we want the advisory board to then have an opportunity to understand who you are, what you're excited about, and make sure that we can benefit your project at this time. So the questions will be about projects and team members and experience, all those things. It will be roughly, well, don't hold me to this because I got to think about how this will work when we do it remotely, but somewhere around 5 or 10 minutes per team is what we're going to be looking for in terms of how long you'll be talking with the advisory board. And we'll give you some more clear instruction. There's also going to be about a week of time between when you submit and when you are invited to the review night or not, and asked to submit again next year if that's the case. So you'll have a little bit of time and forewarning before that happens. Can I send more than one project? You could. You could. I will say that it's it's unlikely that you have more than one project that is at the phase where it would benefit from the incubator, but unlikely doesn't mean impossible. Perhaps you work in a studio and you have more than one project that's kind of on the boiler at the same time. Perhaps you have a kind of interesting but very very small or modestly scoped game that you're interested in doing some kind of like interesting thing with hyper casual games. Or maybe you've been working on projects for a long time and you just haven't found the right place to launch those games. So it's certainly it's not out of the question that you could submit more than one project, and you're welcome to do that. But I would just be aware that think about what it would look like for this project to be in the incubator, both of them or all of them, and and consider the best chance that you have. Where is your kind of your best shot? Because I think that's probably gonna do better for you. But like I said, there's a lot of different ways where I could see it not being different. Um, so it's up to you. If we're working remotely, the Okay, so yeah, this is a question about kind of working remotely in seats. So the the each developer is going to receive $8,000, each full-time developer. It's possible that you have other people working on the project who are not full-time on the game. So for example, maybe you have someone who's doing network programming that's working with you on a contract basis, or someone who's doing audio design, and they're doing this for a revenue share. So um, in that case, you definitely, there is a place in the application where you should talk about those people. That helps the advisor to understand who the um, your production feasibility, right? If you have a game that has a is going to be on a console, you got to have sound effects. And if no one on your team, no one on your full time team has any experience making sound effects, then the advisory board will say, well, how's that going to happen? And you say, oh, well, we have some part time developers, and here's who these people are. So um, you certainly can, and in many cases, will should have additional developers who are not full time. And there's a place on the application for you to talk about them and to describe what their role is on the project. But anyone who is full time on this project, that person is going to be getting the stipend. And part of it is just to guarantee that they are fully focused on this game. There's a lot of work that goes into launching a game, as you know, and so we want to make sure that each developer is locked into it, and so that if we're going to put our time and resources into helping you launch this game, we want to make sure that the people that are there to do that are fully into it. And so part of that $8,000 is really paying for your focus, your full time focus on this game. So if you have a larger team, not all of them need to be full time developers. But I strongly caution you against trying to kind of game the system. Like, I realize you're like, okay, well, I'm thinking there's a certain number of seats and there's a certain number of people that are going to apply. Like, what if I say I have one full-time developer, but everyone is part-time, and that way I'm more likely to get in because I'm only going to take one seat up. We've done this before. We want to know, what do you need to make this game happen? And if you need 3 full-time people to make this game happen, that's what you need, and that's what you need to submit with. And that's the resources that we want to give you. If you need 4, then submit with 4. That's what we want to see. So don't try to kind of get in by gaming the system. Tell us what you need to do to make this project happen. Um, does the incubator take educational games? Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're very agnostic in terms of what the projects are. Um, Platform, content, outcomes. I mean, it doesn't really matter to us what you're doing, as long as you fit with those criteria that we described earlier on. So um, production feasibility, commercial potential, and kind of innovation and experimentation. If you feel like you've got a game that meets those criteria, and it's also educational, then fantastic. That sounds even better. Um, yeah, we're open to more or less anything within the bounds of what we can help support, right? So if you're gonna come up with the next esport platform, this probably isn't the right program for you. We're really more focused on the development of games than we are on a game engine, or some kind of tool for making games. So I'm not saying we're a fit for every single person, but I am saying that there are many different objectives for what game development looks like and what your game might be about, and we welcome you to apply. If you believe a team is too small for scope, can we bring people on? Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we would encourage you to um, use the application process to think through what your game needs. And if you're doing that and you're like, shoot, I really do need another programmer, then yeah, find one. And what we're not going to say is, if you say, I'm applying for 2 full-time positions, and one is me and one is a person yet to be determined, that's not going to work. You need to have those people already lined up and identified, and bought into the program, because there's a pretty high likelihood that you won't be able to find that person in time, or something else will happen. And so you have a little bit of time here now. If you feel like you do need to grow the team, make sure that you do that between now and when the application is closed, and that person is fully committed to the project and understands what that commitment would look like. If you if you don't have a link to a playable version of the game, so for example, if you have an analog game, what should you do there? So there's a email us is the short answer to that. We've had all kinds of applications, both to the the MFA and the BFA program, and to the incubator in the past. One time, someone mailed us a giant cake that was part of a board game. So we've done all kinds of stuff there. It's likely that we will say to either do some kind of print and play, or to make a more likely would be to make a video that shows the game and describes the game, and then also you would supply us digital versions of the cards and the materials so that we could look through it in that way. So I would say that if you have a game that doesn't lend itself to kind of distribution, to digital distribution, now would be a good time to start thinking about what is the best way for me to demonstrate and what's interesting about that project through a video or some kind of other digital format. If it's absolutely essential that it requires some kind of in-person or physical review process, then definitely get in touch with us and we'll figure out how to make that possible. So is this for only games that are already in active development, not pre-production or prototype or proof of concept? Yes, that is the case. The this is aimed towards the part of the project where you're turning the corner between just making the game and launching the game, which in many cases is a very long process that involves figuring out where to launch it, how to launch it, who to launch it to. It's going to change the development of the game over the course of that launching process. But if you just still in the kind of gray box area, if you just have the programmer art and the index cards, you're not yet ready for the incubator. We fully intend to do this again next year, and so we welcome you to come on back in the future. But pre-production or proof of concept, that's a little too early for this particular program. Able to talk about sales figures of games in the incubator, so we get an idea of how experimental games fare in the wild. Um, hmm. I don't think I can without these games. I mean, ultimately these are the developers' games. These aren't the incubators' games, so I don't feel comfortable, um, kind of disclosing sales figures without asking the developers first. But I don't mean to be cagey about that. I mean, it really depends a lot. I mean, look, this incubator has been going since 2014, and so if you look at something like the state of the App Store or premium mobile games like Sunburn was when it launched in 2014 versus what premium mobile games look like now, it's a totally different picture. So comparing the kind of revenue that game made, it's just not really, that doesn't happen anymore. Now you've got Apple Arcade. I mean, it's possible to do the kind of a premium um, iOS game, but it's a different market at this point. So um, it varies a lot based on each project. Um, and different projects have different kind of ceilings and floors. And so something that is really, really out there, we might be really excited about this team of developers. We think that maybe we even think that this particular project that you have isn't like the one, but we've seen your work. We love the style of the game. We love what you want to do with your fledgling studio. And so in that case, we might take a project that we don't think is likely to be a financial success for you, and we would be clear with you up front and just say, like, this may not be the success that you need, but we don't want to set you up for failure where we say, well, yeah, let's just launch it and see what happens. We want you to be thinking about how do I maximize the benefit of this project. So we would be talking about how do you launch it quickly, how do you launch it in a smaller way. Maybe we want to connect you with a publisher so that you could work with them on this game in a small way, and perhaps they pick up the next thing. And so there are a lot of ways that these projects kind of live that sales figures doesn't do quite a good job of describing, and the program has been going on for a long time, so it's quite different. All of that being said, I mean, it's tough out there. You're making pop culture. You're making things that are different, that they're strange, often. They're beautiful, but by nature of the fact that this is a program intended to help things that aren't already successful, chances are this will not be financially successful. I mean, that is true of any piece of pop culture, any film, any piece of music. And so we want to find projects that we think have a good chance of being successful, that can support you, and we want to maximize that benefit for you. But I'm not going to be able to tell you that this will definitely be a success. In fact, statistically, it may not be. But we're here to try to help you get as most of it most out of it as you can. Um, yeah. A design. Would you like to include a design document or a pitch deck with the application? The application is pretty specific in terms of what it's looking for. So my advice there would be just answer the questions that are in the application as best you can. So everything that you need to know, everything we need to know, is already in the application there. But if you do have questions about it, you're welcome to email us and we can clarify. Um, how playable should our games be for pitch night? Um, well, here comes another. It depends. It depends. They should be playable for sure. If you are planning, it depends on what kind of game you have and when you're planning on launching it. Every game that gets into the incubator is definitely playable. You we You're not really doing game production in the incubator, ideally. You probably will be, especially because things change as you learn more. So, for example, okay, you do a marketing workshop and you learn that the best opportunity you have to market your game is on Twitch, and you don't have a good the game doesn't look that good yet. Let's just say that, and so that you want to find a game that is sticky, that people can play, that looks good in video, and we know that the game itself is really entertaining. But if we were to give that to a bunch of streamers and try to get them to play it and kind of grow the game's market from there, it just doesn't look good enough to kind of sustain people's interest. And so we might say, okay, well, we know what we're doing now with the game. We know what your audience looks like. We know how we're going to market it, but you're not really there yet. So for the next month, you're going to be focusing on building up the visual appeal of the game, and that's going to lead you into a more development heavy place. And then we'll come back again in 3 weeks and see what it looks like and see where you can go from there. So that's the kind of development that you would be doing in the program. Certainly, any of the games that are applying need to be playable. They need to have a sense of themselves. They need to be already working so that we understand what you're going to need to do for the rest of the program. Where's the next question? Do we need to have all of our contractors on board before applying? No. So you do need to have your full-time team aligned before applying to the program for sure. But in terms of contractors, you don't. I mean, it would be helpful if you had an idea of who that is. Certainly, you should have some sense of what you are going to need. If you know for sure that you're going to need someone to do voiceover, we would like to see that you've thought about that you maybe have some contacts. Maybe now would be a good time to just reach out to some people and say, this is what I'm thinking about. Whatever you can do to show us that to kind of de-risk your project. We want to know that if you need contractors, you know how to do that, and you know maybe who they are, or maybe they've already talked to you and said, I'm excited about your game. I know that it's going to be launching in February of next year, and I want I want you to know that I'm excited about it, and I'll be there as long as I can be. And so that shows the advisory board that you're aware of what that is. But you don't need to have those people locked in, because it may be a year or more before this game is done, and things can change. So full-time people, yes, for sure. Contractors don't need to be already aligned before the incubator begins. Contractors and also people working in the game part-time. The more specific you can be, the better in general. GameCenter@nyu.edu. GameCenter@nyu.edu. That's the place to send your questions. That's the place to ask about where to send your materials, or to ask a clarifying question about the application. GameCenter@nyu.edu. You can also write us on social media, or whatever it is, and we'll respond to you through there. That's the place to go. Are you looking for a team to continue making games as a collective after the incubator? Not necessarily, no. It's a good question. I mean, we, what we want to do is we want to create sustainable game development. Really the big picture here is that um, we want to put more beautiful, interesting, weird things out into the world, and we want to encourage other people to do this, and to be able to do it, and to find a sustainable career and audiences in doing that. We think that this project is kind of the program is kind of avant-garde. I was talking about projects that don't have a market fit. Um, well, hopefully we can kind of push your game forward and find that audience, and then all of a sudden you are the project that other ones look at and say, "Oh, that's the kind of thing I want to make," and they've done it before, and I can do it better than they have. And so as a result of the games that come through the incubator, we want to be changing the landscape of who can make games or the kinds of games that they make. So it would be great if after the incubator your game is a massive worldwide success, and your team does a great job working with each other, and you want to continue doing that. I think that would be an ideal outcome for us, and that has happened in the past. But if you have a group of people that have come together and they want to make this game, and then after that they're going to go to other careers, they're going to go work in other places. That's totally fine as well. Part of what we're doing is we want to benefit the um, even though we're talking a lot about the game itself, and that is the focus of the incubator, about launching this game, about giving you the resources for this game. Really, truly what we're working on is the people. We want to give you the connection to a larger network. We want to give you the experience and the expertise, the kind of safe space to try these ideas out, and learn what it is that you like about doing this or what you need extra help with. And so it doesn't really matter to us what you're going to do after the incubator if we feel like this program can really benefit you by helping you launch this game. And it'll lead you more likely to lead you to a sustainable career making experimental and avant-garde work in the future. And so there isn't a kind of definition of what the success looks like in terms of team composition outside of the incubator or after the incubator. Okay, I think I got them all, but if I didn't, now is the time to ask, because we're all here together. So um, if you have any other questions that you haven't got here, then again, gamecenter@nyu.edu is the place to ask. And I think, and I'm now realizing that I've been talking at my computer for an hour, and hopefully there's a well, you ask questions, so I know that people are out there. Or Logan's doing a great job of pretending to be multiple other people. So thank you to Logan Claire for running the stream, and to my colleague Tony Pizza, who works with me on the incubator, and to the rest of the advisory board and Game Center faculty and staff who make this thing happen. To the Bigglesworth Foundation and to New York State. All of these people are the ones that are making this incubator possible. Thank you for coming to this info session tonight. I look forward to seeing your application. I'm excited to be doing this again, and I hope to meet you soon. So thank you again. Have a great night, and I will see you in the future. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.